so tired of you getting angry and yelling all the time. It's exhausting.
Let's talk about student loan debt. So, Senator Elizabeth Warren is urging the president, and this is recent as of this weekend, but it's been going on for some time. It's Senator Warren, it's Senator Schumer from New York. Senator Warren is urging the president to cancel student loan debt ahead of the midterms. So that's where we're going to spend the balance of the show. We're going to talk about student loan debt, young people, budgets. When she was talking about a lot of student loan debts, and I don't know where she's getting her stats from, but it's an interesting place to go. She's talking about people who took student loans, but they didn't finish. So you got student debt, you didn't finish your degree. And her quote was, "These are people who tried, but life happened. Pregnancy, they were working 3 jobs, their mom got sick, they had to move to another city, and now they earn like a high school grad, but they are trying to manage college loan debt, and it is crushing them."
Are you saying this is someone, just want to make sure I understand this then, that someone that would not have completed or did in fact complete?
Did not complete. They are not degreed. So they have the loan, they started a program, but they did not complete.
Yep.
So according to the Federal Reserve, student loan debt in this country is at $1.7 trillion.
Just over.
Yep. And the average debt is $39,000.
Yep.
So,
well, this is how I'd like to start out. Is what do you tell somebody who sacrificed everything in their life, all their disposable income, to pay off their student loans? What do you tell them? What do you tell them?
Well, yeah, that's what I'd like to know. What do you tell me? I had student loan. I had 60, 70, 80 grand of student loan.
Yep.
I didn't take a vacation. We couldn't afford a house. We didn't go out. We just didn't have that stuff because the trade-off was that I wanted the education to change my life.
Yep.
Recognizing that the education, something motivates you to go to school unless you're forced to go. But so there's that piece. There's what do you tell the people who already paid their dues? And then there's the piece of it. You put your signature on the line. You signed. It doesn't matter if you're 18, you're 30, you're 40. You signed the line.
It does though.
No, it doesn't. No,
it
you
does.
signed it. You signed it. Well, I signed my mortgage. I want someone to pay my mortgage.
Yeah,
I signed up for way too much house. My wife and I, we really can't afford it. I want someone to come in and pick it up. Life happens. I've had a death in the family. What else did Senator Warren say?
You go down the list.
I had to move. It was terrible.
I
had kids. The mortgage.
Life got in the way.
I want the federal government to come in and pay my mortgage.
Let me ask you this. So you started off the conversation with the concept of talking about those individuals, and Warren, I think, highlighted, you said those that did not finish. Do you feel like there's a discrepancy between those that are paying for something that in the end they don't receive versus those that do go about completing it and having to pay back, given whether or not they actually are getting what they've paid for? Because school can be 4, 8, 10 years worth of your life, right?
You're gonna hate this answer.
No, I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that.
That's the Frank Sinatra song. That's life.
That's okay. So you view
that
it
is
as
life. That is life. You can buy your first home tomorrow. You can sign up for $1 million home, right?
Yep.
And tomorrow the market's going to crash, and your home is now worth $200,000. That's not what you signed up for. You signed up for $1 million home, and now your home is worth $200,000. You are upside down on your home. No one is going to come in and save and rescue you. You will lose that house because you won't be able to afford it, and it's worth nothing now. It's the same as a car. There's special insurance now you can buy with a car that is upside down insurance, where the value of your car is less. You crashed your car. The value of it, the replacement value is now less. You can buy insurance to make up that gap.
Yep.
I'm not suggesting the taxpayer should pay for that gap. I get it. That's life.
I guess my thought there is I don't think that taxpayers should. Do you know where I think that money should come from? It should come from the universities.
Well, that's a good point.
So rather than having the taxpayers pay for it, these universities that are profits. It's the whole idea of right? Why are we going after the individuals that aren't actually sure, they're making the interest rates from the federal, based on the student loans, they get a percentage from the interest over time that they are capitalizing. But I think a vast majority of that money is coming directly, the universities. And we look at the university, what are they called? The trust funds for Harvard is something stupid like $2.5 billion.
The trust, yep.
Yeah, they have multiple billions of dollars at just one of the primary universities, right? These universities have cash on hand available. They choose to house it invest it and watch it just create compound interest. So rather than going back to the taxpayers, I agree the taxpayers aren't someone that should pay for it. The institution is what failed those individuals, or those individuals failed the institution. Like, I'm not going to take that away, right? There's lazy people that, just don't do stuff. But I think, and again, this comes back to my comment around like, okay, I think it does matter whether you're an 18, 30, 40, 50-year-old, is that at 18 years of age, 99% of 18-year-olds don't have a true concept of what $30,000 looks like.
Are we teaching the wrong shit in schools then? I mean, are we teaching the wrong stuff in schools?
Absolutely.
I had to take a money class in school
at like the elementary level.
Yeah.
I think that there should be way more real life scenario. There should be mortgage. There should be courses on how to balance a checkbook, on how to bank, how to invest. Those should be staples in schooling. I'm also intrigued with the aspect too, and like looking at I was thinking about earlier today, I'm dumbfounded at the aspect of how college has gotten so expensive when information has become so much more readily available. So LJ, when you were going to college at that time, it was more, and I'm not going to say impossible, but it was definitely more challenging to get access to all the information that colleges were providing you. Why now, as the information is becoming more and more easily digestible by everyday individuals, where you can basically self-educate on anything a university is going to teach you. Any information that a university is going to provide you outside of personal experience shared by those professors a lot of time, which does provide some value of being like in a university setting, the actual knowledge base around that, like all that information is easily acceptable.
Have you walked around a university lately, Will?
They're fucking beautiful.
Yeah.
They're nice. They're big. And
the
again,
word you were looking for was endowment earlier.
Endowment.
And you said trust.
Thank you.
You walk around a university, they don't look like our public schools. Our public schools that still have some radiators and stuff, right? They are beautiful.
Yep.
And, they're always under the guise of, well, we have an endowment and, so-and-so, this gajillionaire who went to school here left us this money.
Yep.
Yeah, but you're also still paying your professors. Pay your professors out of that building and let that building stay like it is for a few more years. That's what our high schools look like.
Yep.
Why do you have these amazing, yeah, it's beautiful and it's pride and it's alumni giving. I understand the whole model because I worked at a university for a while. I don't want to pay for it. I go back to I don't want to pay. I don't want to pay. I don't want to pay for it. A professor to me is a part-time job. You do research. I get funding your research from government money.
Yep.
I don't. And also you can endow a professorship, right? So your salary is paid for from a chair. You get, it's an endowed chair.
Yeah. All the money in universities isn't at the professor level though, right? It's at the board and people that are. I mean, like when you're comparison wise, right? So professors and like tutors and stuff like that make dog shit.
It's really the tenured professors.
That
it is the tenured professors. In order to get on a board at a university, you're typically already rich. You're an alumni who has made it well, and they have appointed you because you've got all the connections in town that you're going to throw the galas at your mansion, and that's going to bring in more alumni dollars.
Yep.
The people who are making it's the infrastructure of the university, big new beautiful buildings, what you said, and it's the professors who have tenured and they are there. And they're not going anywhere.
Yep.
And it's not the teaching assistants. It's not the professors
They make scraps.
Yeah, they make scraps.
I mean, table scraps.
It's the big professors.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah,
but I was intrigued with that aspect. And yeah, again, I think to like the main point to that is that shouldn't be funded. Like it shouldn't be paid for. My whole thing, I think, LJ, looking at this situation was the aspect of like ignorance around at 18 years of age, you're considered adult, but maturity wise, from a life experience standpoint, you're an adolescent or essentially like a small child, right? Because you don't have any life experience. And you're supposed to be poor through your 20s. That's, hard times, learn, live, grow, all that type of thing. I don't think student debt should be one of the things that you're stuck looking to grow from at that stage in your life.
So maybe don't let them go to school. Don't let them sign the debt.
Yeah, well, and I
think it's gotten more strict since I went to school. Like I think they have to take classes now. Before you just walked into the bursar's office, you signed your name, and all of a sudden you're.
And why was that? Why was that though? Because your debt to income ratio of the amount of money that it was conceived at, dude. Like
you couldn't borrow anything else for that, right? Like you couldn't buy a car. You couldn't borrow money to buy a car. No. You couldn't borrow money anything that had an asset.
For a credit card.
You
for $1,000 credit card.
How easy it is to borrow money for college.
Oh yeah, no, I know.
Yeah.
I know.
It's incredibly easy.
Borrow money for college and stop at the first table in the student union and get your first credit card.
And that's what's
really
Really easy.
Yep.
Right.
At the core of it all, I think that assessing the cost of school is really the crux of it, right? Because loans aren't the enemy; they're really not.
No,
It's the amount that you're needing to take. Because Kessler, to your point, if school, even on like okay, let's say on a like what's an average salary, right? $30,000-$40,000 a year, let's say, right? And I want to say that conservatively.
It's a little bit higher probably now.
It's probably
Yeah,
a little bit
yeah,
higher, but
yeah.
let's look at a $30,000 to $40,000. Given a monthly budget around that, what seems like a reasonable amount for you to be paying for school each month on a $30,000 to $40,000? It's probably only $50 to $100 at the most, I think, as a reasonable, like, still wanting to live. Like, looking at it from that perspective of going, okay, here's realistically where we are. Let's build a budget up from that, as opposed to going, schooling costs X amount, you now have to just make that work. That seems like the wrong methodology and wrong thought process to how we'd assess that.
I don't disagree with you.
But
I
again,
agree with that, but no one is going to tell you that.
No
That's
one's
the
and
problem.
no one's going to do that, right?
Yeah, no
because
one
it's
is gonna
not
do
in
that.
the institution's best interest.
So when I was in high school, and I'm dating myself, there's a class called family. What the hell was it called?
Family planning.
Family living. And so you got married. So you had a plan for a wedding. You had a baby. It was actually an egg. You had to walk around to the school day with an egg. And so you were fighting with, you know,
That's realistic.
you were
That's why
assigned
we do it.
You were assigned a wife.
We'll make this
My
realistic.
wife was I was assigned a wife, and I wrote in my yearbook. No. Oh, sorry, I'm not allowed to say that probably. She was very nice.
He dropped the last name.
You got a great personality. All right, that's fair. We know what you're saying.
She wrote in my yearbook something along the lines of, I hated our marriage, I hated our child, I hated our whole life together.
She's got a sense of humor, though.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. That's
So,
funny.
but they taught you planning, because part of the exercise was, what do you want? You're seniors by now, so you kind of know what you want to do with your, you know what you think you want to do with your life, I should say. And so it's like, okay, so the teacher gets up and she had like average salaries of these jobs.
Yep.
Okay, well, this is the job. So you probably, unless your parents are paying for education, you're going to have this much student loan debt. And she walked it from there. So when do you think you're going to be able to get into a house? I mean, she ran the whole financial model for everybody. So
Yep.
we had an idea, because I had this crazy vision. You know, I was going to go be a pilot. So I'm thinking I'm making $200,000 when I'm 23 years old.
Yep.
And this was in the 80s.
Yeah, you're living.
And so,
You're thinking
you
I'm
know,
going to be living the good life.
So I went home to my mother. I said, "You think I could live on $200,000 a year?" And my mother looked at me. She's like, "Are you nuts?"
You'd be living in the
Yeah.
top. You'd be living in the top.
You can live
you're
on
in the top-
$200,000.
Yeah, you're the top 2%
You know?
of
And
income earners at
I
that
know,
time.
but so I think those classes went the way of some of the other classes that were probably valuable life classes in school. It was No Child Left Behind. We got rid of some of those other life classes that we probably still need.
Let me ask you this: what stopped you from doing that then? What was the ultimate thing that deterred you from going to pilot school or becoming a pilot?
Oh, that was just family stuff going on.
Okay,
It had nothing
all right.
to-
So
it had
nothing to do with
it had nothing to do with
financial
finances. No.
constraints or anything like that for me. It was just
No,
like
I
everything
still
for-
borrowed a
okay.
significant amount of money, but recognizing too that when I got out of college, I was poor as dirt.
Yep.
You know, my wife and I had to live with my mother. I mean, we had
Yeah.
to figure out things so I could pay my student loan debt. I mean, that's that. When I say, you know, it's a hard pill for me to swallow, because I've been there and I've done that. No one handed it to me. I had a significant amount of debt.
So let me ask you this then, LJ, because this is something I thought of at the beginning, but I wanted to have the discussion before asking you this question, which was, do you feel that that's right? Not is it fair, given your life experience and what you've had to go through, when you look at your sons, when you look at Vincent, and you go, right, the idea of any parent is, I want my kid to have a better life than me, right?
Yep.
Every parent
Yep.
has that thought. Do you view this, like, what do you feel truthfully would be right versus what's fair?
I think back, I don't blame the university. I mean, going to the university I went to was a very prestigious place to be in its hometown, right? I was probably one of only three people who got into it from my high school. So it's a prestigious university. So, you know, it's not the kind of place you say you get into and you don't do it. Like, you just figure out how to afford it then. And that's what I did. Looking back, you know, as you know, with my, you know, older head on my shoulders, I probably should have went to a state school, because that's what was more affordable.
Yep.
And it wouldn't have mattered on the degree. I mean, it also
The same opportunities
I would have had the
presented
same
themselves
opportunities
regardless,
because
right?
I am who I am. I mean, you know, there's something to be said about the alumni network that's associated with the, and you know,
A lot about who you know.
And I do have the university on my paper. You know, look, I went to this university. You
Yep.
know, I mean, but
At the end
so
of the day,
I don't blame the
opportunity.
university. That's who they are.
Yep.
You know, did they sell me a bill of goods? No, I take responsibility for having made that
Yep.
decision. But I go back to, I don't want to pay for it though.
Yep.
I don't want you to have to pay for my decision, whether I was 18 or 50. That's, you know, I didn't. For the record, I also didn't have parents who went to college, and so there was nobody in my life who could set me. Now my kids have that benefit, so I can set them aside and say, "Hey, before you go looking at a private university, da 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 da." You know, I didn't have that in my life.
Can I ask what university
that I went to?
Yeah,
the University of Rochester in Rochester, New York.
Okay. Yeah, and the reason I asked that is, like, again, from the mentality of, like, you want life to be easier and better for your kids, right? Yep. And so while you may feel that it's like, I paid my way, I paid my dues, I dealt with a shitty time in my life when I was in my young 20s, right? Fresh out of college, having to, scrape to get money together, eating ramen every night just to be able to pay my student loan. I again ask the question is, do you think that that's right? Not or even fair? And if the answer is no, how would you look about addressing that then? And I think we kind of touched on it, right? Of like looking at, like, I agree with you that it shouldn't come down to the taxpayer. It should come down to the universities. Like, the universities have the money to support that. And again, specifically, my target was those individuals that don't get what they're paying for because they don't complete a degree. As someone that dropped out after 2 years, and I'm very fortunate my parents are in the position that they're in.
As I was saying it, I'm like, oh my God, I'm just quoting something on the guy on the other side of the glass today.
Yeah.
When I was writing this up earlier, I didn't even think about it. And then, I'm like, as I'm reading, I'm like, oh God, I'm describing Will.
Yeah. No, yeah. It was very personal to me.
Sorry.
Very personal.
Hey,
yeah,
you can't be offended on our show. As
not.
My opening spiel, don't be offended.
And I'm not. No, not in a way. I just, like, again, generate the thought, because from
Sure.
my perspective and going through what I went through, like, and again, I'm very fortunate my parents did very well for themselves. I'm in a position where even in my early 20s, I didn't feel like I was really in over my head at any point. But there's a lot of people that do. And again, from a perspective of, like, my old college roommate went to the University of Minnesota with me, and he was going to get an engineering degree, which is an extremely challenging line of courses. The mathematics, I looked at some of the stuff they had to do, and it was just far beyond my capability of understanding. And he went to school made it 2.5, 3 years, ended up dropping out, and now has far more student loan debt than me. Again, my parents had some money to help assist with that. I'm, 20, 30,000. He's looking closer to like 100 and doesn't have a degree now to go out and earn the amount of money he should have. And I think in those situations, regardless, again, if it's the university's fault for not holding accountability, or however they're, that barrier, or the individual himself not realizing what it was they were signing up for, I think that risk should fall on the university, not on the individual, and not on the taxpayer to have to fill. I think that there's enough money for that. That's something that they should be able to figure out. And I think it would help alleviate a lot of that. Because, again, as an 18-year-old, you don't really know what you're signing up for. When you went to college, I got to imagine at some point you're like, wow, this feels like a lot in comparison to maybe what I was anticipating.
So I dropped out because I went away to be a pilot initially.
Okay.
So we're missing that piece of the story. I did. Paul's shooting me the look. I went to be a pilot. I went to a university in Florida, Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. I dropped out after about 2 months. My parents were going through a messy divorce at the time, and it was hard to be away from family and friends, and so I left.
Yep.
And then I enrolled in the University of Rochester.
Okay.
Where, I still finished on time because I took 2 summers at a community college. But, yeah, I originally went away to be a pilot, which is ironically what my youngest son wants to do now. But I won't send him to Embry. I won't send him to Embry-Riddle because it's a private school, and the tuition is now $56. I just looked the other day.
A year? Semester or a year?
A year. I'm like, that's tuition. That's not flight time. I'm like, I can't do that. You won't make. So that's me now, because that's what I'm saying. I didn't have the parent who went to college. That's me now saying to him, I can't afford it. We're not going to let you take the student loans out to do it, because when do you think you'll be able to pay that amount of money back?
Yep.
And so that's
over a 30-year mortgage, because it's a mortgage
it's
payment.
Any other thing you're deciding at 18. Your parents have to, and I get it. Not everybody has the homes to support that, but your parents have to at some point also put their arm around you and say, "Hey, pull your head out of your ass. This ain't going to work." Yeah. It's a bad idea to become a father right now at 18, and you probably shouldn't take on $200,000 in student loan debt.
The problem with that is, as an 18-year-old, a lot of times that falls on deaf ears.
I know it does.
Or it's stuff you don't want to hear from your parents. And, like, I think that's a common thread. So looking at how we can assess that and, like, incorporate that into the calculations as to how they go about that would be important. Let me ask you this. So the one thing I was looking up here, LJ, while we were talking was, do you know what your University of Rochester's endowment's at? the value of it?
I don't, but I'm pretty. I'm
you take-
pretty
you want-
sure it's pretty significant.
You want to take a guess?
I don't. Why?
It's just over $2 billion. So there's $2 billion, and that's in cash that they have. As do over 45 other colleges across the U.S. Over $2 billion.
Look to see who the chairman of the board is. Can you pull that up quickly?
Yeah.
It probably is a trustee. I think they call them trustees.
That dude probably makes...
No, I'm saying that was
Multi-million?
I'm saying my point is that person's already a gajillionaire, so they're not collecting a salary from the university. We want to talk about
the thing that bugs me about the whole student loan thing is that it's so predatory. When you're in high school, to be successful, when they say, "What do you want to do after high school?" the only good response is to say, "I'm going to college."
Yeah, it's right.
It's the only good point. It's the only good thing to say.
Yeah.
And to know that the government is subsidizing these loans for you to go to college and then waste your whole time, basically your whole existence,
Yep.
put you on a bad trajectory is wrong.
I have a son who didn't go on to college and still isn't, and for me, that's kind of a hard pill to swallow because I figured it out and put myself through. It's like, what do you mean? So to your point, that is the answer. What are you doing after high school? You're going to college. That's the answer. That's the answer we give our kids. That's the answer I was expecting because I did it. There's no other answer. Initially,
That's the other issue too, right? Is that
it's a mandatory. His mother came to me and was like, "Well, I think we should discuss letting him take a gap year." I'm like, "What? A what? No, a gap year. A gap of what? That sounds like he's going to sit around and play video games all day. No,
Right.
Get his ass to school."
Right.
I think
Well,
I don't know.
Before you get to that,
Yep.
when you're taking out student loans, and who's profiting off those loans? Who is?
The university,
It's the university.
and
No.
the Federal Reserve,
The federal
because
government.
it's the government. Again, from the interest
The federal
perspective of
plus
their,
loans,
their
right?
yep.
They're the ones profiting.
Well, so I if I'm recalling the way the program works, students don't owe the interest while they're in school, which is a short period compared to usually the payback. So I'll tell you for my circumstance, I had so much debt that the standard payback term when I was a student was 10 years. You were allowed to consolidate and push that to 20. I had to push it to 20.
100%.
So when I got my first job out of graduate school, I was now 20 years on the hook. And so now the government is making 20 years off of interest rate from me because I had no choice.
Right. You had a mortgage before you.
I had a mortgage. Well, we
Yeah.
joked. It was the LJ mortgage. Actually, that's what we called it. We called it my mortgage.
Yeah, because it is. I mean, these guys are coming out having
Yep, absolutely.
apartment mortgage, and then you're asking them to basically, and that's why a lot of 20-some-year-olds have no capability of purchasing a house. And the saddest reality to me in that eyes is that whatever they're paying in rent typically is going to be higher than whatever they would get approved for. But because they have student loan debt, they don't get approved for the mortgage that they would be paying less than they do in rent each month, and that's something that they're having to do anyway.
Hey, two other points I want to bring up is that some of the counter argument to some of this going to, hey, we can't do this, besides people who, like me shouting, I don't want to do
Yeah, the taxpayer doesn't want to pay.
is that the people that you're going to be rescuing aren't people who really need it anyway.
Well, that should be taken into account, right?
Who owns the debt? Are we talking people like medical doctor degrees and because there's already programs for medical doctors on hardships and stuff. So I was reading the highest income, 40% of households, those with incomes above $74,000 owe almost 60% of the student loan debt. So we're not talking about poor households here. We're talking about households who have, and I'm not talking about the people who completed who are living paycheck to paycheck. So that is so
because there's a lot of
as
those
you're going
too.
out there, and I would challenge Chuck Schumer and Elizabeth Warren that you're buying votes at this point. If you're suggesting we need to get this done this summer in an election year because you're afraid of losing the House and the Senate, you're buying votes. You're buying the youth vote, which
You're trying to.
You're trying
I'm
to.
gonna say you're trying to.
Which you can argue they're the ones who showed up the last time and was able to change